Hey guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Haley. I'm a 27-year-old cashless budgeter, recent graduate, and caregiver who's looking to repair her relationship with finances as well as work towards financial freedom. If that's something you're interested in watching, please leave a like, comment, subscribe down below, and let's get into the video. Hey guys, so I created a poll on my community tab a couple days ago talking about the difference between an emergency fund, a month ahead fund, and a rainy day fund, and if people thought of them as different savings versus just a part of a general emergency fund. I will definitely work on leaving links down below explaining the difference or what people define as a rainy day fund or define as an emergency fund. I just thought I'd just jump on here very quickly and explain my emergency fund as a whole and what my purpose and goal for it is, as well as how I divvy up my different envelopes and goals. So, hiccups. To start off, I do have an emergency fund, and I do consider it separately from my rainy day fund, and I consider my emergency fund and my rainy day fund separately from a month ahead fund. Again, however you would like to do that is your prerogative. Me personally, I consider it separate entities because I have distinct separate purposes for using them. My emergency fund is just a bucket at my high yield savings, so all of the funds that I just mentioned are saved in one place. However, the purposes for them are different, which is why I use or like to use prep money envelopes to help differentiate all those subsection and parts for me. So I will probably divide this by timestamps, but I'll start with the review of my emergency fund. So here's my emergency fund in my green adulting binder. I call it like emergency house, emergency storehouse, because my emergency fund is broken down into a bunch of mini emergency funds. I am gradually working on them, and they aren't really funds I would consider dipping into first. Some of these do have regular envelopes in other binders of mine, but I consider the money that's in here as last resort type. So one of the first envelopes that are related to, get back to that Marine Day fund, but one of the first envelopes that are a part of my emergency fund is home emergency. I do have, if you guys seen previous videos, I do have an emergency, like a mini emergency fund for home, mostly for home maintenance. Like, for example, we just had to spend money to, we just had to spend money to replace refrigerator. If AC goes out, if we need to replace one of the bricks that are outside. Small things like that I consider, even though they're like slight emergencies and more so inconveniences, but still try to save money for them. I call them emergencies mostly because they're things that can happen suddenly / quickly and not something we were expecting necessarily, but in terms of home maintenance, kind of got to be prepared for everything. This fund, and again, none of these are fully funded. I'm still working on them. But home fund, this would be something, or emergency, in a case that, we actually have to file a claim with insurance, and they only cover but so much, or we have to spend but so much before insurance kicks in. Replacing HVAC system, furnace, like larger expenses of that nature. I do want to get this up to, I think it's up to 1% of what your home is worth, and or what your deductible is for insurance. As far as I'm aware, ours is closer to the $3,000 range at the moment. Again, all of this is being reassessed, so I won't have a final number probably until next year. And house property values change all the time, so I don't necessarily know how consistent that is with the 1% idea. However, it's a goal of mine to at least get this up to $2,000 to $3,000, so that in the case of a bigger emergency, we have to pay out this money before insurance kicks in. We're not trying to scramble around to try to find it. So that's one part of my emergency fund. The other part is pet emergency. As you guys know, I do have a bunch of pet care envelopes related to their health, general needs, general expenses that I expect, vaccinations and whatnot. Pet emergency would more so be so if I have to go to an emergency vet, something randomly comes up and I have to pay a copay or something out of pocket before they would operate. Not the same as humans where you can go in and still receive treatment potentially, you just get a bill later. There are some vets that just don't do that. So, and I do have the care credit card that if push comes to shove, I know people have different opinions about credit cards. I would probably put, if I'm allowed to, put the copay on that first and pay it out. If that becomes the case and I do have an emergency related to my dog, I would dip into this money first. I do not use this for any of the vaccinations, especially when I know they're coming. I plan for those. I have an envelope section for those. But this is in the grave case of an emergency where life happened. And you'd think that they would be a little bit better about keeping themselves alive. You know, it's kind of like a basic understanding, you'd hope, but apparently that's not the case. I did have to take my dog to emergency room one time, I believe, and I was able to avoid having to pay out before he got treated because the treatment was something they gave me the option to do at home. And it happens, again, life happens. Dogs are just like children in a lot of ways. But that really did prompt me to try to build up an emergency fund specifically now for just one dog, just in case he has an emergency. And also when he gets older, pet insurance can be very expensive, and, you know, they age just like humans do with certain health and medical related concerns. So I also want to save up for that to be able to cover anything that might be the result from that. May get pet insurance. Certain pet insurances are pretty expensive even for him now, as he huffs. I don't know if you guys heard that. So I'm trying to work on building up emergency savings and stuff now, and we'll probably consider more pet insurance that has more coverage in the future. And the last part of my emergency fund, base of my emergency fund, is medical deductible. Now, I do have insurance. I believe my deductible of my insurance is $500, so I've already saved up that $500. However, I do have an out-of-pocket max, which is $2,500. So now that I've saved my medical deductible, my goal is to save up that out-of-pocket. So just in case I have a medical emergency, I'm able to pay that out immediately, and then my insurance could kick in for any other high expenses. Again, I am not... Excuse me, got the hiccups. Sorry. I have saved up medical deductible. I am not intending to have a big giant emergency. But given some of the chronic conditions I do have, I know that they can become problems for me in the future. So I'd rather be prepared now than to wait until something happens. So that's just me. And then scooting back up, I have here my rainy day fund. Again, these are all in the same bucket, my high yield savings account, but they're for different purposes. I am more willing to dip into my rainy day fund before I am willing to dip into these other envelopes. Why? Because I consider my rainy day fund to be my miscellaneous, inconvenient emergencies that the envelopes I do have in place may not be able to cover fully. I'm not trying to go in here for like small things if something came out like $50 over what I expected. But rainy day fund would be the case of, say, for example, I need to replace my brake pads. I currently do not have enough, at least in my mind, I do not have enough to save up to do that fully. I don't want to empty the entirety of my car envelope, and if I do, maybe it won't cover the full cost of that. That would be a situation where I would go into my rainy day fund in order to finish covering that cost, or replacing tires or something of that nature. I don't see my rainy day fund as part of my emergency fund. This did start as my emergency fund when I was doing Dave Ramsey's baby steps, saving the first 1,000, so it has 1,000 in there. But of course, like, he doesn't think so, and I don't think so either. $1,000 is not really enough, but it did give me a miscellaneous cushion so that while I'm building up my other envelopes, I already know I have this emergency money here just in case. I don't have to worry about emptying every single binder that I have and starting from scratch. So I did make it a priority to get this first, to get this first $1,000. I know people have criticisms of Dave Ramsey, the baby steps, how his approach to things. I'm not as, I guess, hardcore gung-ho as he was, because I was building this $1,000 while still paying down on debt. I didn't stop that. I didn't stop my retirement contributions at work. I did lower them to be exactly my company match, but I didn't stop them entirely. So again, I say whenever anyone mentions anything to help get you in a better place, whether you follow the money guys and their food, whether you follow Dave Ramsey and his baby steps, you take what's good for you and kind of leave the rest. Because this is your own personal situation, so you just make it work for you. You don't have to do everything that these people say. Again, they're putting it out there to help you, and you have to take what's for you, and everybody has to have their own approach, because if you're not motivated yourself to really get serious about certain things, then nobody can have that feeling for you. So take from that what you will. If you would like to know how I built up my rainy day fund while still paying down debt and other things, I'll be happy to answer questions about that, or I don't think it would need to be a separate video, but if you want me to, again, I'm totally open to doing that. So, moving on. Now, what you've actually seen in my personal savings binder as my monthly savings challenge is going towards what I consider to be my month ahead fund. My month ahead fund, I also call my parachute fund. Why? Because I am working on saving months of income for me. There are people who go with a month of expenses and then build up from there. That's great. There's some people who keep it in their high yield savings account as a just in case, or people who save it up and then use it to then be a month ahead on every one of their bills. So on the first of the month, they could just pay out their bills for the month, and their monthly income for that month goes to pay bills for the next month. And that's totally cool. If that's how you work, absolutely great. For me, I just want to have it as a just in case scenario, that if something were to happen with my job, I have something to hold over until I can find a new job. Right now, I'm working on my first month of income, and then goal for probably in the next year or so, get up to 3 months, and then gradually get to 6 months. My ultimate goal would be to have a year's worth of my income saved in a high yield savings account. I know there are people who are going to have disagreements about that. Some people are like, why don't you just put it in like a brokerage account or invest it? And I do want a brokerage account at some point in time in the future, but for right now, I prefer to have certain baselines within a high yield savings account. I'm not shopping around for high yield savings account for the best rates, because I just see the rates as a perk or extra. But my main priority is that I have somewhere that I can access it, but it's not easily accessible. I can't just do direct transfers and it be there in 5 minutes. But I can still do transfers and it be there within a reasonable time as well. I like the fact that I get to have it in a separate account. There are no minimums or minimum requirements for me to have it, and I can slowly build on it as I want without it being in the same place as like my checking, for example. Some people can do that. Some people like to have their checking and savings in one place. I know I cannot do that. I am not that person. So having a separate bucket in my high yield savings account just works better for me. My parachute fund in general is, yes, it's for the case of emergencies. In this case, a job loss would be an emergency. But I do not consider it in any of my other emergency fund envelopes. If I were to have an emergency that was not affecting my income in the sense that I did not have to take off work to deal with it, or I did not lose my job because of it, I wouldn't be dipping into this fund. That's just me. This is a last resort type fund for me, or in my mind. And I wouldn't be comfortable taking it out of it unless it's in the case of reduced hours or job loss. Again, everybody has their own preference related to that and what they will and will not use the emergency funds for, or emergency fund, depending on if they separate or not. But I like to set up different parameters. So I know for sure if I'm going in here for a particular reason, it has to be for that particular reason. I'm more lenient with my other envelopes, admittedly, as I said, but parachute fund is probably the only one that I will not really, I guess, compromise on, as far as what I'm taking the money out for. So, sorry guys, I had to go pick up a package, and my dog started barking because they're at the door. Anyway, I thank you guys for watching and sitting with me go through my emergency fund and different parts of my emergency fund and how I save for them. If you have any questions or comments or anything you'd like me to go into deeper detail with, please leave it down in the comments. Also, leave down in the comments, how do you save for your emergency fund? Do you split it up into different sections? Do you have rainy day fund and emergency fund? Do you save for a month ahead separately? Do you consider it part of your emergency fund? Let me know down in the comments, because I love to hear people's thought processes and how they basically build up their savings. I thank you guys again for watching. I hope you have a blessed night or day, wherever you are in the world, and hope to see you guys next time. Bye, guys.